Hey, what's up, guys? Little Man with a Big Opinion here. In today's video, I'm going to talk about an oral interview that I listened to while I'm searching for primary sources to write a history paper on. I have to write a 25-page paper. I need 10 primary, 10 secondary sources, and I get to pick the topic. So, my topic of choice is, the sacrifice for the people left behind. That's my title, um, and I'm talking about what the American people did during World War II. I'm specifically leaving out, those that went and actually fought in the war, whether in Europe or the Pacific, because that's very widely talked about. There's countless movies, articles, books written on that, but there's not a lot written about what went on at home. And in listening to this oral interview from this woman born in 1928, they conducted this interview in 2014, and I'll put a link in the description down below. It was done by the World War II National Museum in New Orleans. So you can either search their page and find it, or it's a lot easier to just go in the description below. And if you don't want to listen to it because it's like 45, 46 minutes long, then I'm giving you the parts that are important for a prepper. Um, so in 1928, she was born. 4 years later, she had a brother. Her parents lived in Los Angeles in, the 30s and a little bit into the 40s. And her brother had a health issue that constantly required him to, consume milk. It had a lot of the vitamins and nutrients that he needed. And so his dad moved them out of Los Angeles, and I think they moved to San Bernardino. He said they only moved 20, 30 miles down the road, and the whole purpose of that was they needed a piece of land so that they could have a goat. And instead of just buying the goat, which is what they needed to get him milk, they also bought a cow, which they milked that as well. They bought a couple of ducks, and they bought 500 chickens. So pretty substantial amount of livestock that they purchased, all so they could, provide for their family and, keep her sister or her brother alive. And this was in, the mid 30s that this happened. And so her family did fairly well off during the Great Depression. She said they ate a lot of eggs. They didn't butcher the cow because they got meat from it. And it was a lot cheaper to purchase a goat. And so they would, you know, butcher the goat and get another one and get milk that way. But a cow was apparently pretty hard to get a hold of. And then when it came time for World War II to start, she was 14, 15 years old and in high school. And so she was going to school. She joined a, Civil Air Patrol unit, and she did all these things to help her community. Her dad went and worked in a shipyard. What is this? Oh. Her dad went and worked in a shipyard, and it didn't say what her mom did. I think she might have been a stay-at-home mom. But because her dad had a skill in metalworking and that kind of thing, he built ships for the war. The whole time this is going on, they have full-blown lives. Dad had a very well-paying job that was a 42 to 48 hour a week job. They still had time to take care of their animals, and essentially the rationing was hard for them, but only for coffee and sugar. That's the only thing she really said they complained about. And she can recall, her mom going to the store the day after Japan had, bombed Pearl Harbor. And she bought like 6 months worth of flour and a bunch of other canned foods and stuff. And she really wished her mom would have picked up sugar. They didn't think sugar was going to be an issue. They thought flour was going to be an issue. Another big thing that they promoted through, war propaganda and newsletters and stuff was a fighting soldier consumed twice as much food. That's one of the big reasons why we had, ration cards and stuff like that. But her family was able to eat eggs. They were able to sell eggs or give eggs to their neighbors in exchange for other goods that they didn't have. And that's something that our society has gotten really far away from. Um, Either you're a farmer or you don't have anything to do with animals except cats and dogs. And so I'm moving into a house June, July. I have plans to plant fruit trees. I have plans for a chicken coop, and if space allows for it, because it is in a small city, and I have to stay so many feet away from the closest neighbor that I want rabbits as well. And I plan on having, some sort of job, whether it's in history or whatever. I don't know what I'm going to do quite yet. But as a prepper, you know, aside from maybe a handful of the really big channels, yeah, I would say maybe Canadian Prepper doesn't have another 9 to 5 job. Maybe Bear Independent doesn't have a 9 to 5 job. I don't know what they do because they don't really talk about. He did some security work and contracting work for bunkers and prepping and stuff, but it's tied into his channel. It's tied into his lifestyle of building a homestead and stocking up food. But most preppers, we're still going to have some sort of 40-hour-a-week job to pay the bills, and the funds that we get from that will put back into food storage and stuff. So, long story short, if you have the space and you have the funds to be able to put away, food and water, then within your budget, you should also be able to, acquire a dozen chickens, 2 breeding rabbits, um, planting fruit trees or nut trees, and then a rain catchment system. That's the only thing I would have added to the people in World War II. She didn't mention it, so I don't know if they had a way that they gathered water. I don't quite know where they got their water from, but they had lives that they put into careers and stuff, but then they put in the extra work and effort that even if they had lost their job, they wouldn't have to worry about feeding their family. So as a prepper, it's again, I released a video today, practice what you preach. If you if you've reached the level of prepping where you have enough food stored away for 1 year, I'd say that's the bare minimum. Um, you know, a little bit greater number would be 2 years or 5 years or something like that. If you have that much food stored away and it's long term food, then really all you're doing is delaying the inevitable of, unless you are 50 years old and you put away 50, let's say you put away 70 years worth of food, because if you live to 120, congratulations. You're going to run out of food eventually. And that's saying you don't have kids or grandkids, or you have no desire to continue a family. Your line ends with you. Then, unless you have the exact amount of food to put away to have you, your friends, your family, anyone that is within your group, or if it's not a group, it's just you and a spouse, or just you need all of the calories, all of the food you need for yourself. And that's a lot of money. But for the same price of putting away a year's worth of food, you can plant a dozen trees that generate food for you. You know, most of them have a 1 to 5 year period of growing before they produce, fruit or a nut or, You know, I'll include bushes and stuff like that. So for berries, but that is spending the same amount of money as you would be to putting food away, and it's something that will continue to pay dividends. You know, you always know you'll have, you know, 4 dozen apples. You know, I don't know the yields of an apple tree versus its first year versus its 20th year. I gotta sneeze. Huh. All right, so I mean, I know that the yield is smaller when it's younger, and it steadily gets bigger. Some years are smaller than others, but it is something that will continue to provide sustenance for you. And if you care to listen to, you know, this woman's story, one of the other things she mentioned was that was one of the only things during World War II that she felt, you know, she wasn't really scared of. She said, I ate a lot of eggs, but I had something to eat. And so, with your stages of prepping, you know, the first stage is becoming aware that you need to put away food, you need to learn skills, you need to, you know, develop plans and stuff like that. The second stage is having the store of, you know, sustenance, storing your dehydrated milk, your mountain house food, your lighters, you know, your peanut butter, all this kind of stuff. The next stage is being able to generate that on your own. The other little cool thing about it is if you're making your own, you know, I looked it up for a pear tree, one that is roughly a year old, you're spending about $100. And as long as it has water and sunlight, your pear tree pays itself off in about 10 years. And when you are selling a house, having a fruit bearing tree, just one, raises the value of it between $1,000 and $3,000. So, you know, there's your little bit of financial advice as well. Spend $100 as soon as it starts bearing fruit. At the lowest end, it's worth 10 times as much as you put into it. At the highest end, it's worth 30 times as much as you put into it. So, her story is a perfect example of, you know, we put in the money and the time and the effort to raise livestock that produce food for us, produce a little bit of, you know, liquid in the milk from the cow and the goat. But they did that in the mid 30s, in the middle of the Depression, and it could have been the thing that kept their family alive. And then when World War II happened, I know it's really patriotic that you were, you know, rationing what you ate so we could fight, you know, in Europe and stuff. But the way she describes it, they didn't um, have to, you know, suffer through that as much as other people did because they were prepared. And that's something that our society has, you know, taken a big step away from. You know, we have people that are perfectly fine with spending their money on their, you know, organic avocados and stuff. And, you know, it costing more than the normal avocado when you could plant an avocado tree. I think she said she had an avocado tree as well. I know they planted trees along with the livestock that I talked about. But like I said, I'll put in the link or in the description, I'll put a link to her oral history interview that she did. And if you've got 40 minutes, not only is it, you know, good wisdom from a woman that lived through a time that, you know, it shows the importance of this next level of prepping, but it's also her history. And, you know, the reason why we have this oral history is, you know, when they pass away, if their family doesn't continue the story, then we have a digital archive of that story. So if you enjoyed this video, you know, at this point, 15 minutes, that one's 45, an hour of your life, you can get some good knowledge. Um, Hit the description down below. Um, if you think this video is informative or educational to a friend or family, member, then share it with them. That's the biggest way to spread, what I talk about is sharing with your friends and family, because then they'll share it with their friends or family, and we'll be over 100 subscribers, in the next month. And if you specifically like what I'm doing, then subscribe to the video. And I got anything else for you. So I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.